everybody. Welcome to Communication 24/7, where we communicate about how we communicate. I'm your host, Jennifer Furlong. I have a very special guest today. I'm super excited because she is one of my most favorite people in the world, and I just admire everything about her. She does so many cool things. She's just like the coolest chick that I know. She really is. So I will do a quick introduction and then we will dive right in to ask her all the questions that we want to ask. A quick reminder before I get to the intro and we start the discussion with Rachel. Don't forget that we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. So if you join us throughout the show, please feel free to make comments, ask questions. We would love for you to be a part of it because that's what makes it even more fun. So, okay, here we go. All right. Rachel Rainbows and her company Razor Productions have been creating materials and messaging for high profile clients and brands for over 20 years. So she knows what she's doing. Okay. She and her team are now turning their talents towards inspiring and supporting children. And we all know our children, they need as much support as possible, especially in today's day and age of technology and everything that's going on in the world, as well as inner children. So we'll talk about that for us as well. Building self-esteem, self-reliance, and healthy habits through story and song. And it's going to be in her new educational children's television show called the PossibiliTree, which I can't wait to talk about that as well. So much we have to pack in the hour that we have together. But Rachel, thank you so much for being on the show. I love it that you're here.
I am so happy to be here, Jennifer. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted.
Absolutely. I couldn't wait for today. I kept looking at the schedule.
The calendar is like
closer and closer. Yeah. And look, Karen is watching on LinkedIn and she says, super cool. Thanks,
hey,
Karen. All right. So, Rachel, before we dive in, and get into everything else, because there's a whole lot I want to be able to cover, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background? I'm sure there are a few things other than what was in that very quick bio. So, catch us up.
Sure thing. Yeah. Well, I'm a stop motion animator. By trade, as you said, creating messaging for brands. This is one of my special skills. I am a performer. I'm a songwriter. I'm a musician. I build things. I go on adventures. I'm a tree climber, word rhymer. And I've been doing making things and selling other people's stuff for over 20 years. And now I'm really excited to translate and funnel all of that energy that I had towards helping the world.
Yeah. I think stop animation is so cool. It's fun to watch, but I know it's so meticulous. And I'm always so interested in the behind the scenes stuff, which is another reason why I'm glad we're having this conversation. It always reminds me of, I guess one of my favorite movies is, Tim Burton's Halloween Before Christmas.
The Nightmare Before Christmas.
I'm sorry, The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies. I absolutely love Tim Burton and just watching all the behind the scenes stuff, that they've released over the years. It's so incredibly cool. When did you, so you've been in the business for over 20 years now, and you've been a singer, songwriter, and, everything else that you just talked about. When did you first realize that you had a talent for this?
I would call it a skill. Not a talent. It wasn't something that awakened in my blood one day and all of a sudden I knew. It was something that I diligently worked at for a long time. And, so I don't tend to call things talents unless you're really born with it and it just sort of comes out of you, for some people, but stop animation especially and songwriting, I think is just one of those things that you have to just keep going at
Mhm.
and keep working at in order to make it go. And like the behind the scenes is like slow motion. You call it stop
Right.
motion, but it's really slow motion. So it's not as exciting, although it's cool to see like the time that gets put into something like that. Watching it is certainly boring. I mean, it is.
I Well, I appreciate a couple of things that you just said right there is the time and effort that it takes, differentiating between talent and skill because even those who might have a natural talent for something, and I love to use sports, as an analogy. I played, sports growing up and um, I was naturally talented to a point, but I wasn't quite as good as a lot of the other girls, for example, playing fast pitch softball. Like I was pretty good, but I still had to work so hard at it, just to even make the team. So even if you do have, let's say, a natural talent for singing, or a natural talent for writing. Even the professionals will tell you if you want to go from good to great, you have to be able to put in the time and effort to hone that craft and think of it as a craft. If this is truly what you love to do. And my daughter, who is an artist, she's a potter. She's in the ceramics arts, and she even told me one time because I was admiring her work and the way she's been able to grow over the past year and a half to 2 years. She says, "Mom, it's just I get into it every day. I'm experimenting. I'm doing different things, and that's the only way I'm able to do this. Anybody can do this if they just put the time into it." And she's so right. And communication's no different. Even with your singing and your songwriting and all of that. So take me back. I do want to go back to the beginning just a little bit. Were you always into stop motion, or was that something that progressed out of your singing and songwriting? Because I know that for a long time, like you even have music out, right? That's
Mhm.
available
Yep.
online. So is that where you began? Was it in music, or take me back to the beginning? All this, you're like a fountain of creativity. It just kind of flows out of you. So what was the worst thing? Or not the worst, but what was the first thing?
First thing. Yeah, well, okay, I think it's music came first.
Mhm,
My family was very musical, and I grew up around music, and so, my desire to create and to share came from that musical space, and, I was in a band for
mhm,
15 years. And, our first record was really interesting and cool. And one song in particular was funky and interesting. And we came up with this idea to build a pop-up book that was
mhm,
like to make a music video. And so a lot of my early stop animation and even videos, my exploring making music videos for these songs.
yeah.
So, we built a pop-up book, out of the characters in the story, built a little story, and the characters, like, were meant to just be, like, tabs and, interact with each other, like, with thumbs, like with pop-up books do. But I met, an amazing person named Jim Starachi who
Mhm.
inspired me. He said, "We've gotta stop motion animate this." And he was an animator before, and so he and I worked together for almost 2 years to make
Wow.
a 90-second video.
2 years for 90 seconds.
It was a
But I bet you
lot.
learned so much in that time, and so I guess that was kinda like your beginning education,
Yeah, yeah,
transitioning into this
yeah, and
aspect.
it definitely, I think sometimes the things that take the extra effort and that extra work to do, it's kind of, you just have to sort of move the curtain. You gotta, like, l
Mhm,
drop the
mhm,
veil. It's like, you're right, it does just take effort, and for a person like me who maybe had sort of inherited a bit of perfectionism or a bit of,
mhm.
it is challenging to suck at something. for a while
Right. Yeah.
before you get there, and like a project like a long form stop motion animation project, you're gonna stumble a lot and you're gonna redo
Yeah.
things a lot and you're gonna have to just get comfortable and patient with that. And like
Right.
patience, ugh. Like
Yeah.
who taught me that?
That's such an important life lesson though. Anything worthwhile, you're not going to come out the gate being absolutely wonderful and terrific and everything is just going to fall into place and it's going to be perfection. And
And if you
even when you
do,
do that, it's not going to be
you're in
perfection.
trouble. If you do, you're super in trouble because the rest of the things in your life aren't gonna go that way, and so you're gonna
Mhm.
compare those things, and you're gonna say, "I'm supposed to be good at these things," and then you're gonna stop yourself from even exploring. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
very common for children or people who are good at something really early in
Yeah.
life and then don't make that extra effort to fail
Right.
and fall and fumble at the other things.
Yeah, this was so easy over here. Why isn't this easy? Why
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
I do this? Now, Karen says she's calling BS because you are
Ah,
so talented and you do work really hard.
that's nice.
And we have LinkedIn user. There is no creative in this industry as magically talented as Rachel. Nothing she can't do. Look at your fans showing up.
Uh,
Yes, that
Thank
is
you, Jordan.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jordan is a
Um,
longtime collaborator of mine, so
that
he's
is awesome. That's why I love doing this live. So people have an opportunity to kind of see you and you get to see them and feel that love and support. So you've mentioned not, you've mentioned that if you start out the gate and you're really good at something, there can be an issue with that. And I think that's such an important point. And it's not something that is discussed very often. Usually, if something comes easy to us, that'll be the focal point, and then we'll kind of like let everything else. So we don't want to be afraid of trying anything new because something else was easy. Because what if that one thing that you're having to work for, you're having to practice so that you can get good at that skill, and that ends up being your true love. That ends up being something that takes you to the next step. And I think with the stop motion, it feels like as soon as you kind of stumbled onto that and you saw how cool it was, even though it's pretty arduous, it takes a long time, right? 2 years for 90 seconds. But here you are, even to this day, you're still using that medium as a way to tell stories, and to
yeah.
connect with others. When did you feel like, wow, I'm actually getting pretty good at this? When did you start getting some recognition for this as not only just something that you're good at, but it does seem like you're really talented at it, even though I know that you've said that you've had to work hard at it. I would call it a talent because when I watch what you've produced, I'm like, that is the coolest stuff like ever. Have you gotten to the point where you've let that sink in and you're viewed as kind of a go-to person for this stuff?
Yeah, it almost happened right away. The music video that I made for the band, caught some attention, with some
Yeah.
folks in the industry, doing working with Showtime, working with, Cartoon Network.
Mm.
So I had kind of a parallel path, doing production design in those industries, and people said, "Oh, you have this as well to offer." And they started to invite me to work in paper, to work in stop motion animation. One company hired me to almost duplicate what I had done with the music video for
Yeah.
them, for Shameless, for Showtime.
Uh-huh.
And so right away, I started to get recognition, and of course, it wasn't the recognition we were hoping for the band. It
Right.
was whoops. Um, um, but
Kinda like No
yeah,
Doubt, it's like,
yeah.
"Oh, she's getting all the attention now."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, it happened right away, and I was ready to explore. I've often, always just really been somebody who followed my heart and said, "Oh, that's an interesting thing. I want to sort of follow that shiny thing." I'm like the white rabbit. I'm like, "Woo,
Yeah.
where's that hole lead to?"
Right, yeah. Where is this gonna I think you do have to have a healthy sense of curiosity to be able to kind of jump into the deep end of the pool, if you will, and you're not even quite sure what's in there with you, what's going to happen. I mean, this could be the most awesome thing to ever happen to you, and it will open up so many doors as it has. Or it could be the one thing that, hindsight, that probably was not a very good idea to do that. Have you had any of those experiences? Like, okay, I'm glad I tried it, but I've learned my lesson. I'm not doing that again.
I blocked them out.
Okay.
I tend to sort of have a selective memory when it comes to my adventures because there's
Mhm.
so many of them, and as a freelance person, it's just constantly different, constantly new,
Yeah.
a new group of people, a new group of people. I've definitely winnowed away some of the decisions. Like I don't say yes to those kinds of jobs or with those
Mm.
kinds of people, and but yeah, I don't. Not anything that really immediately comes to mind.
Okay. So that brings up another question. I know so many people that are freelancers, and
Mhm.
there's freelancers in pretty much any industry you can think of. But one thing that I think all the freelancers have in common is trying to figure out when to say yes and when to say no. Were you always in a position that you were like, you know what, regardless of the money, I'm going to say no to this? Or were you in a position like I think many freelancers are? Yeah, this isn't exactly what I want to do, but I kind of need the money right now to at least make some funds so I can get to where I want to be as the next step.
Yeah, I think the only I set a boundary that I wouldn't
Mm,
advertise for cigarettes,
yeah.
sort of right
Okay.
away.
Okay. Yeah.
That like kind of kids and just like that.
Hmm.
So I that was probably the highlight of my career was saying no to going to the Marlboro
Yeah.
Ranch, for an
Right.
adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
I'm really," but mostly I believe that there is, like, an opportunity hidden in every, possibility.
Hmm.
There's, like you
Yeah.
don't know who you're gonna meet, you don't know what kind of skill you're gonna be able to develop, you don't know
Mm-hmm.
what the creative process is gonna be, and the commercial
Hmm.
industry is what it is.
Hmm.
But it's full of people, making
Yeah.
creative being creative together
Hmm.
above all. And for certain, there are certain work environments that I say no to, but you have to try it first in order to know that
Yeah.
that person is actually no toxic, and I don't really want to work with them anymore. But
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah.
this industry is really about the people.
Yeah, I think that's why I wanted to ask that question. What a fantastic lesson to be able to share with anyone who's just starting out, in any industry that is a freelancer, because it sounds like you're pretty certain about what your values are, and you're pretty certain about what lengths you're willing to go,
Yeah.
where your boundary is, and exactly when to say no. However, also think about the networking aspect. There are a lot of people in the industry that might be that one event that you could potentially, meet
Yes.
someone that could help further whatever it is that you're trying to achieve.
And values and value. I would say, like,
Mm,
your values, but also know your value. And raising your day rate really helps
yeah.
keep away the riffraff. If you're,
Right.
I mean, it's one of the things that I would recommend to any freelancer who's not happy with the kind of jobs that they're getting. It's just
Yeah.
raise your rates.
Yeah.
Like, you know, focus
Yep.
on, finding those people that you are really inspired by and supported that can support you in that.
Yeah. That's a great testament to you can follow exactly what it is that you want to do. If you have this passion for something, you can make a living at it, and be creative and meet lots of really cool people along the way. But I think we have to just drive home that important point that you just made is to value yourself, know your worth. And I think a lot of people, especially when you're getting started out as a freelancer, it's really easy for us to undervalue what it is that we're offering. And so, how did you develop that mindset? Did you have an aha moment where you were like, you know what? I think I can up my standards a little bit. I can up my price. This is something that I need to make sure that I am showing my worth, my value through the prices that I'm setting or what I'm charging, to work with anybody else in the industry. Was there a moment that that flag just kind of raised up and you were like,
Oh, yeah.
"Okay, I'm getting it now."
Oh, like, once a year. I
Uh,
have really, like, I mean, once every season, there would be,
mhm,
like, another aha moment. I would have,
mhm,
like, what I'm culling, like, what I'm not
mhm,
accepting anymore. I won't accept jobs
mhm,
that are like this anymore. I won't accept
mhm,
scarcity. You come
mhm.
come to me telling me you don't have any money already. I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna struggle for you." So,
Right.
the optimizing my experience and the
Mhm,
experience of my crew, making
mhm.
sure that I had enough, that each job had enough to support, me having the crew that I needed in order to
Right.
make this happen. I wasn't gonna like scramble
Mhm.
anymore. Like each leveling up was, kind of a new aha moment. And I think being ready and being open and having that conversation with yourself that's like, am I happy? Am I okay? Am
Yeah.
I being supported? Am I inspired? Like that constant conversation will allow for those aha moments to happen every morning. Like, aha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you almost as a creative, especially a lot of artists that I know, they have a really hard time balancing that artist mindset versus that business mindset.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really important because you do run the potential of undervaluing what it is that you are offering. And it doesn't matter if you are a painter, if you are a musician, if you are a potter, whatever it is, unless you're willing to start developing that business mindset, you run the risk in undervaluing yourself.
Yes.
Karen says, raise your rates. Love it. Yes. So let's talk about this transition because you worked in, the music industry and then commercial industry. I've seen a few of your commercials that you've created. Um, what about this transition now that you're wanting to put your efforts and your talents toward a children's television show and tell me a little bit about that. Like why are you wanting to transition your focus? What's the story behind that?
Well, I am really concerned about the state of the world. And
Mm,
I sort of woke up into that, a number of years ago when I realized that there were people that were, being terrible to one another. And
mhm.
I
Yeah,
know that this
yeah,
has been happening through history, but there was a kind of an awakening
yeah.
where a lot of things came to the forefront. And I was sort of brought to my knees a bit,
Mm, mhm,
by the heaviness of the planning that had taken place in order to shift elections to, the balance of power, and then the it just hurt my feelings.
mhm, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and, um, and that awakening and that awareness raising really brought me to the mattresses. It brought me to
Mhm,
the chalkboard. It
mhm,
wiped my slate clean, and I said, "Okay, this is not okay with me, and I'm not okay just sort of sweeping it under the rug. I'm not gonna hide from this anymore. I'm gonna do something about it. Well, what can I
mm,
do? What skills do I
mhm,
have? Um, and how can I prepare myself for the
mhm,
journey ahead? Like I saw myself as going into battle. Like I
mhm,
said,
yeah,
without too much, violent metaphor, like I
mhm,
knew that I was going to raise arms against the sea of troubles and like
mhm,
do something about what I saw was happening. And what I saw as I started to heal myself was sort of an epidemic of neglect,
mm,
of illness, uh, people focused on sort of. misinformation and,
Yes.
sort
Mhm.
of just
Yeah.
being sort of washed away and like having the control of their own health just put outside themselves and like
Mhm.
not really being empowered and
Right.
encouraged in with love, but instead being fueled by hate.
Mhm.
And so made a I started to develop this idea to create a program that would help people come into their power and
Mm.
find the joy and the love. I mean, I saw that, our educational system, our medication system, is all just about waiting for somebody else to do it for us
Yes.
and to follow the rules. And those rules have been, put into place to create factory workers for factories that don't exist anymore.
Mhm.
And, not only are people, thinking that they have the security of a job that all of a sudden can be lost in a
Yeah.
minute. Industries are just falling. So,
Mhm.
I saw this opportunity
Mhm.
to educate children and inner children on how to find that inspiration,
Mm.
how to get their energy up, and how to find the purpose, and
Mhm.
make some inventors. Like we
Right.
have, it's a blue ocean out there. Like things are
Mhm.
being invented all the time. The digital landscape is wide open. Like there's so many opportunities to make and do, and these old paths of education, these old paths of like sort of letting the doctor sort of just prescribe you medication instead of understanding that our bodies can heal ourselves.
Yes.
So, it was a big mess for a very, very long time. And I narrowed it down to um, using my talents, to using the skills that I had created, accumulated and
Mhm.
practiced and nurtured, to distill what we all know about learning and growing, the best of what the world knows, into songs like jingles that'll get stuck in your head. So like I have an advisory board a mile long, so that because I was frozen for a bit. Like, do I have to then
Mhm.
like go back to school and like learn all the things? Like, no, I have to like get all the people in my corner that know all the
Yeah.
things, and I can do the translation and the magical part.
Right.
So, I'm mission driven to distill
Mhm.
what the world knows about learning and growing into palatable, delightful, enjoyable lessons that will we can get embodied, that we can
Yeah.
embody.
Oh, that is I ha it I can't tell you how inspirational that is. There's so many things that I love about what you just said there. Number 1, that you took stock in what was happening around you. And it doesn't matter what you're thinking, politically, what news that you're reading, who you're having discussions with, just to be able to stop for a second and take stock in what is happening around me and how is it impacting everyone from children to adults, and what is it that I can do to try to make things a little better? What talents do I have that I could use to make the world a little bit better, to create some type of reconnection, to empower others, and children? Because you're right, there are so many issues. As a media analyst, one of the things that I do with reading the news and listening to podcasts and watching, television programs, we are bombarded with thousands and thousands and thousands of messages every single day. And of course, it's having an impact on how we view the world and how we view each other,
And
and
ourselves.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's probably, this is my opinion, I think that is probably one of the most dangerous side effects of what we're witnessing with what is happening with access to technology and social media. And then the way, clearly, if we don't have a good solid foundation, to understand that the media, to become more savvy consumers, of the media, everything that we're reading, everything that we're watching, to question, to study, to reach out and ask people who you may view as different from you, but just to ask them their perspective on something. And you may not necessarily agree with them, but to be able to just at least understand how someone could have the worldview that they have. I think that will take us in such a positive direction. But I just love the fact that you're like, you know what? I got some talents here. I
Yeah.
know I can do something. So I'm just going to do what I can do and help wherever I can
Yeah,
help.
it's a do my part, and
Hmm.
it's one of the lessons that your fairy guide mother, and the
Yeah.
PossibiliTree shares is what is your part?
Right.
What special part do you have to play in
Yeah.
this world? What can you do to change? What can you do to help? Like,
Hmm. Yeah.
this is, like, empowerment 101, like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
encouragement, because this
Hmm.
self-love, the believing in your self-worth that we have, like, that isn't the message that we're receiving from the
Hmm.
media, most of the media, and especially, and I'll,
Hmm.
raise my hand, from the commercial world, because a
Yeah.
lot of times the commercials are out there to create lack, so that they can,
Yes.
make you feel like you're
Hmm.
not enough unless you have their product,
Hmm.
and that's
I
one of the
need
techniques.
this.
I need this, or I'm not enough if I
Mhm.
don't look like that,
Yeah.
or, I'm gonna buy that product so that I look more like that, or I'm gonna,
Hmm.
change my body, or change
Yeah.
who I am in order to make myself more acceptable, because this is the standard of acceptance. And that we
Yeah.
just know now that that's so not true. And but
Right.
still, there's not enough messaging on the other side of that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
equation.
You can buy all the stuff, every infomercial that's ever been created out there. You can buy all the stuff that you think that you need in order to be happy and be surrounded by all that stuff and still not be happy, because that's not what you need. That's
That's
not
not how it
fulfilling.
works.
Yeah, it's not,
Yeah.
there's that hole there, and you're right. That self-empowerment piece is what you need in order to be able to recognize that. Karen says Rachel speaks the truth and creates a future for everyone that works and no one left out. I want to know about the red hair. Is it a superpower?
Freedom.
Great question.
Thank you. Yeah, it is, it is. It's a freedom, and it's a freedom of expression, and it
Hmm.
also shares the boldness that I have, then the commitment that I have for
Yeah.
creating, and it also attracts attention. The kids like it
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
lot. So, yes,
Yeah.
it's a superpower.
Yeah. Yeah. Freedom. But it's also important. I just want to take a quick moment to highlight how people's viewpoints, perceptions, even with something as simple as what color am I going to wear my hair today? And what kind of message does that send out, to the different audiences? And I love that Karen said, is it a superpower? I want to know about this, bright red hair, this fabulous red hair. I had, when my daughter was younger, she used to love to just put all kinds of wild colors in her hair all the time. It's just, and we played with it. I was like, sure, let's do it. Let's have fun with it. And I mean, one, she will have blue, and then she'd have bright pink, and just all kinds of stuff, having fun. And an older gentleman asked me one time, he was a professor in a school that I was working at, and he said, so how do you handle that, if your daughter, because his daughter was doing the same thing, what do you say, how do you handle that if your daughter wants to put all of these crazy colors in her hair? Like, doesn't that bother you? And I said, look, if the worst thing that I have to worry about is that she wants to have fun with her hair, why would I deny her that? Like, that's the worst thing I got to worry about right now. Like, let's think about that. It's bringing her joy. She's having fun with it. It's helping boost her confidence. Like, why would I take that away from her? So I think that's just an example of one of the things that you're talking about, that self empowerment, being able to just appreciate someone else for their self-expression and just allow them that space to be able
Yeah.
to do that. She's not hurting anybody, right?
No. Well, and you know what it part of what it does is it gives up a certain amount of automatic privilege that
Hmm.
you might
Yeah.
have to engage in normal society and be a normal and just be, and there's a kind of a boldness that I think
Mhm.
some folks are excited about, that they can sort of look up to, like, oh, you're
Right.
brave. It's brave
Mhm.
to,
Mhm.
I mean, not as much anymore because it's normalized, but like back
Right,
when I
yeah.
was, younger and doing it, it was kind of punk rock, and it's sort of like, I
It
want to be
absolutely was, yeah.
yeah, so it was a freedom of expression, and that was that boldness, you sort of step out, and you pull yourself away from the crowd, and I think that,
Mhm.
being a healthy version of that
Yes.
is what your fairy godmother is going for. Like
Mhm.
being that model of health and wellness that is also
Mhm.
freedom of expression, that is also, like, I'm not a normal person. I am like my own person, and so can you be. And
Mhm.
there's normal is
Mhm.
just a made up word.
Right, yeah, yeah. So Tim says empowerment is always a worthy message for
Thank
kids.
you,
We
Tim.
agree 1,000%. And that's one of the things. I'm not working directly with kids as a part of what I do with communication skills training, but I'm hoping that by reaching the adults who are responsible for these kids, that they can become stronger role models where it concerns self-empowerment and encouragement. And that's
Absolutely.
why I love what you're doing, because I feel like if we can kind of um, attack these issues, from multiple sides,
Yes.
I think maybe we can stand a chance to make things better, to heal, what needs to
Yes.
be healed. So you've mentioned health and wellness as a part of your mission
Mhm.
with what you're doing now, especially with the PossibiliTree. So, can you just kind of describe what are some of those topics that you're addressing in connection to health and wellness?
Sure. Well, I identify in the program a lot of sort of foundational elements to what it takes to sort of be aligned as a
Hmm.
human being. For one, for sure, self care. It's
Hmm.
very important to know to keep yourself hydrated, to feed yourself what will give you the kind of energy that you want to have throughout your day, and to focus where your attention is being focused on. What? Yes, thank you. I'll join you.
I'm taking a
Ding,
sip
ding,
of
ding.
water. She said, hydrate yourself. And I was like, yeah, I need to hydrate myself.
Everyone. Well, so in the um, I'm like, let's use Pavlov. Pavlov knew
Yeah.
something. So every time you hear a bell ring, so yeah, in the program, for sure, empowerment education about how to create healthy habits. Um,
Mm,
these are not addressed in schools, like how to change, how to make something new for yourself, how to make a
mhm,
decision and then follow through on it.
mm,
Why do it at all? The self-worth pillar. These are
mhm.
pillars of our foundations, like why you're worth it.
Yeah.
You are a special and unique and wonderful individual with an amazing important part to play, and we need you at your best. And
Mhm.
what is it going to take for you to find out what your best is? And that's about listening. When you talk about communication, you teach adults how to listen to a kid, and the kid will learn how to listen to themselves.
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
listening to your instincts and quieting the voices in your head. Like if you're constantly being inundated with messages, or you're constantly watching something on the screen, you're not going to get that imagination to flow, to get that idea, to find out, or even just to listen to your heart, listen to your instincts, and find out where you're at. So
Mhm.
those pillars of attention, hydration, that listening to yourself, all of those things are like so easily derailed.
Yes.
And we know now that trauma can trigger a lizard brain reaction with it so quickly you don't even know it's happening, that all of a
Mhm.
sudden you don't have access to your frontal lobe or your compassion, or anything. So like
Right.
even just dehydration can pull you into lizard brain, and that's like,
Yeah.
but a lot of people aren't even aware that it's happening,
Yeah.
because they just get pulled into trauma response. So
Yeah.
self-soothing techniques, humming, like these are all things we'll integrate into the show.
Yeah. It actually sounds like something that I think many parents would also benefit from
Yes.
watching, because you had mentioned, trauma response, and one of the things that can happen, you'll have parents who have gone through a traumatic experience themselves. And they could have experienced childhood trauma, for example, and we bring that with us throughout the rest of our lives. And so to be able to have something to reach out to and to learn from, and then hopefully you'll have some parents that have an aha moment and they'll think, how simple is that? But I never would have stopped to think about that very thing, right there.
Sure.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when I see a family out and the kid is just being ignored the whole time. For example, in a restaurant, you see a family sitting in a restaurant, they immediately plop the kid down at the table and shove an iPad, in their face. And then the entire time, the kid is just there by themselves watching whatever it is that they're watching, or reading whatever it is they're reading on the iPad. They're not learning the skills of having a conversation, of learning the value of listening when someone else is talking and then having a response, taking it in and discussing certain things. And of course, it needs to be age appropriate depending how old the kid is. But I've seen this happen with teenagers.
Mhm.
And it's like, wow, if there's ever a moment that you have an opportunity to have some really good discussions that they probably need to have, to say things that they need to hear, there's your opportunity right there.
Yeah.
So, that's another reason why I'm excited for what it is that you're doing, because I really
Thank you.
think it's going to do a lot of good for just families as well, if they're paying attention.
Well,
So,
if they
thank
have that attention to pay, and that's
right.
why, in the program, we'll also talk about time management. And you're right, we're
Yeah.
talking to parents too, but like how to
Mhm.
make that extra time, because I don't have time to like make a healthy lunch for my kid to
Right.
go to school with.
Mhm.
I don't have time because maybe they spend 15 minutes looking for their keys every morning, or
Mhm.
maybe they're just frazzled, they're drinking a lot of coffee and they just get wound up, and they go too fast, and they don't
Mhm.
take that time to listen. There's a school of parenting, that sort of became, it's like somewhere between helicopter and ignoring. Like,
Yes.
there's like, you're
Yeah.
not a real person until
Mhm.
you're an adult, and that's just not
Mhm.
the case. Like,
Right. Yeah.
kids are people too. I mean, that
Yeah.
happens right away, and you can talk to a kid baby talk, and they'll end up talking like a baby. But if you
Right.
talk to a kid, if you speak to a kid and listen, with that respectful
Mhm.
intent, you're going to grow a much more respectful child.
Yeah, because you're modeling that. They'll understand, oh, this is how we have a conversation. This is how we solve problems. Oh, and by the way, people are people. We are going to get into arguments. We are going to have conflict. We're going to have disagreements, and that doesn't mean that it's the end of the relationship, and that doesn't mean I have to go into my cave. We
Mhm.
can talk things out. We can, that's a skill that has to be learned. But
Yes.
if your perception is immediately to clam up, I don't want to address this right now. That's an unhealthy view of
Yeah.
conflict. And that's going to, that's just another example of how a child can be placed at a disadvantage, not being able to grow those types of skills that they need. I'm the mother of a 25-year-old and a 24-year-old. I know how hard it is to deal with, from
Kids.
childhood to teenagers to them being adults now. It's a completely different
Yeah.
dynamic now with our conversations, but it's your job as a parent to help them learn how to navigate through this world, in an effective way. And the only way to do that is by being able to create and maintain healthy relationships. And that's communicating, right? That's learning to listen and having difficult conversations when you have to have difficult conversations.
Yeah, and having that compassion that,
Yeah, yeah.
for yourself and for the child, or for the people
Mhm.
that you're communicating with, because, we're not always going to be perfect, and we're going to make a mistake, and
Yep,
not
yep.
clamming up and freaking out and
Mhm.
fearing and like lashing out is,
Right, yeah.
that's a skill too to learn,
Mhm.
like to be
Yeah,
okay to fumble and make a mistake and fall and like, admit that you're wrong. I mean,
right.
that is a big deal. That takes
Mhm.
practice.
Yeah, it takes a lot of practice and understanding. Hello, Facebook user. Good morning. And somebody else was mentioning, yeah, humming can be
Yes.
something to soothe. Absolutely. Earlier you said, there is this balance between the helicopter parent and then, the I guess that would almost be like a authoritarian type of parent. And then you have the parents that are just interested in being best friends. Like, oh, just do whatever you want to do. It's a free world. You're your own person and I'm my own person. And it's like, well, no, I mean, they're developing, so they need some type of guidance to learn
Boundaries,
to do this.
boundaries.
Yeah.
Let's have some
Boundaries.
boundaries. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, boundaries are
Yeah.
important. They keep things in. Like if a glass didn't
Right.
have boundaries, the water'd be all over the floor. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. These are the lessons that they need to learn early. Train them how to communicate in a healthy, yeah, early, and it will be a much smoother adulthood.
yes.
That's true. And it's Candy.
Oh,
Okay,
hi,
hi,
Candy.
Candy. Yeah, so what I want to do is you did provide a video
Mm.
that it's just a real quick video. It's only a minute and a half. So for those who are watching, I would like to be able to share my screen so we can watch the video together, and then we'll just talk about it. Those of you who are listening on the podcast, you'll just listen. Listen very closely. This is your opportunity to practice your listening skill. Focus. Listen for the main points and what everyone stands to gain from a show like the PossibiliTree. So let me share my screen here. Here we go. And I think actually I need to share the audio as well, don't I? So I think I need to do that again. I'm going to share my screen, share audio, system audio. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm doing that right. Look at me. Look at me and my technology.
Good job.
Yes, thank you. All right. So let's take a look at this, and again, if you're listening, just take a listen.
I'm Rachel McIntosh, and I'm developing a children's television show called The PossibiliTree. And in it, I play your fairy guide mother. There isn't a lot of powerful female representation in live-action children's television today. Come on, let's grow. Down the rainbow.
Woo! Wee! Your fairy guide mother is not only fun, brave, magical, she's also an excellent listener, and she loves you very much. Each episode will have a special message hidden in some fun adventures, all shedding a loving light on how to be a great person. Mixing live action and stop motion animation.
Dance parties with special guests.
We've gathered together a great team of educators, artists, and healers, helping us distill the best of what the world knows about learning and growing into story and song, exposing and decoding the inner workings of human being, helping them learn to love and care for their bodies, grow their mindset, and build their imaginations. Join us as we make healthy and well-adjusted cool.
Love it. That was such a great video. So many things that are incredibly important, for children to be able to have access to as far as their learning and their growth and their development. Do you ever address the messages that they will eventually receive if at this age, because it looks like that you are focusing on younger children that are probably what, 10
Four to
years
four
old,
four to eight is our
4 to
yeah.
8.
Mm-hmm.
some parents are allowing them at that age to go ahead and have their own cell phones, their own social media accounts, even though they're not supposed to. I mean, I know there's an age limit to a lot of these, but they're allowing these kids to have a lot of access to technology. And I worry about that. Um, do you address that with these kids?
Sure. Well, for one, we're addressing screen time and boundaries with parents. How to
Okay, good.
set those boundaries. It's very important with certain developmental ages. If they have too much screen time, they won't develop their brain. Their brains won't develop properly. But you know, screen time. Obviously, I'm making a television show, so screen time is
Yeah.
is going to be a part of it. And we understand that this is happening, and we're not going to fight
Mhm.
that. And getting kids outside in the AR world with
Yeah.
augmented reality, doing treasure hunts. We're
Mhm.
building our training program in one of those Minecraft servers, so that the kids
Mhm.
are there. Like, let's give them some authentic content that is
Mhm.
heartfelt, that'll hopefully get them outside, get them standing up, get them jumping up and down, get them
Yeah.
breathing, get them hydrating, and getting them into a community, hopefully, that is healthy and not about violence, that is
Yeah.
exploratory, that is puzzling. So I think giving kids an option within this medium. We'll also do live events,
Mhm.
that'll get sort of hugs and eye contact. That's really important. But
Yeah.
it is happening, that the digital invasion is happening. Like, we can't fight that particular piece, but we can offer great content within those platforms, and we can also
Right.
like use this new technology, this AR stuff that's really phenomenal, where their device can allow them access to adventures that can happen in the real world.
Yeah. You had mentioned, yeah, there is kind of an irony that, we're talking about kids having too much screen time, but then we're recognizing, yeah, the show is actually screen time. But I want to highlight something that's very important. It's kind of like the food that we eat, right? And I view technology in a similar vein, like the things that we read, the things that we watch. Um, it can be nourishing, or it can be junk food, right? And so
Toxic.
whatever you're watching, yeah, it can be toxic. So thinking about, yeah, the screen time and the amount of screen time is important, but think about the quality of that screen time. And if you have a choice between something else and then versus something that is actually educational and is going to help in the development of your child's brain and their emotions and the psychology and everything else, think
Yeah.
of it like what kind of food we want our children eating. It's either junk food, poisonous and toxic, or something healthy that's going to help them develop and help them grow in the way that they need to grow so that they can
Yeah.
be happy, and healthy.
Yeah, and hopefully we can
um
make it all taste just as good.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. My
Let's make it
daughter is
taste good.
actually, yeah, my daughter is teaching me that because she's vegetarian, and some weeks she'll be vegan, like she'll feel like, okay, this week I feel like I've had a little, too much cheese, so I'm gonna be vegan, I'm gonna cleanse, and so she's teaching me the ways of eating healthier, and I will say it is making a difference. I do feel like I have more energy. I just generally feel better. I have more clarity in my thinking. So there is something to this, guys. Okay, there is something to this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's also a great example that you can learn some things from your kids at the same time. You, as
Oh,
an adult,
please.
yeah, yeah, you don't
We
have
are
to have all the
learning.
answers all the time. Yeah,
Yeah, this learning thing goes all ways.
yeah.
It goes forwards, it goes backwards. We are. I mean, I think we are expecting and hoping that our kids will outperform us, will
Yes,
out
that
deliver
is the
us,
hope.
will out.
Yeah,
And so let us listen to
yeah,
those
yeah,
children, because often their insights are just, wow,
yeah,
you really thought around a problem that we had
Right.
this fixed mindset. We were
Yeah.
programmed to believe that this was true, and you just questioned the very,
Right.
foundation, which can be
Mhm.
very threatening to
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
folks. And that's why, it's important for parents to heal themselves as well, so that
Yeah.
they can, be more open-minded.
And we are all a work in progress. That's the thing. Everybody's a work in progress.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, people forget that children are human beings. Yeah, that is so
Yes.
true, Candy. That is so true. And look, John Luke is joining us. The magic on
Ah,
this call. Thank you. Everybody is just interacting. I'm loving it. Get that blood moving.
yes.
Absolutely. Educational screen time. Yes, it is important. What you eat directly impacts how your brain functions. You are correct, John Luke. Absolutely.
That's right.
Um, one last thing I want to ask you. Well, actually, there's two things I want to ask you before we begin to wrap up. One, I asked you to provide a book that you would recommend to the audience previously, and
Oh,
you had mentioned The Art of Communicating, which is one of my favorite books of all time. So when I saw that, I was like, yes.
tell
So
me.
yeah. So, what is it? I want to ask you, since you made the recommendation,
Uh-huh.
what is it about that book that speaks to you that you would want to recommend it to others?
Well, for the
Hmm.
compassion for what it takes to listen and to explore the boundless
Hmm.
expanse of what's possible when you open
Hmm.
your heart and listen to not only your own inner voice, but also make room for
Hmm.
other people to add to your bed of knowledge. I mean, it is a magnificent book. I'm interested to know what you love about it.
It the same. When I read this book, now for anybody who doesn't know, and I'm sorry if I end up, I'm going to try the name as best as I can. Teak Nhat Hanh. So
Yes.
if any, yeah,
Yes.
so correct me if,
Yes.
but he was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who, and I think he passed away recently. It wasn't too long ago, but he also runs different camps, if you will, that you can go to. I think there's even one in New York. Is there one in New York that you can go to and you can meditate? You can participate in just kind of getting away from everything else, trying to get all the noise out of your head and really just do some self exploration and how you're moving, around in this world and to be more intentional and purposeful. The reason I loved the book so much, The Art of Communicating, I mean, of course, that's what I do, right? That's my jam. I'm a communication specialist. So I'm constantly learning because, as the world shifts and changes, I feel that it's helpful for me to continue to take in as much as I can, to continue learning about the craft that I love so much. Um, but I read there's one section in particular where I can't remember exactly how he wrote it, but it goes along the lines of the poison versus nourishment. The words that you choose to use can poison, or they can nourish. And so that goes hand in hand with the mindset of always remaining audience focused. Thinking about the message you send may not necessarily be the message received. And so just thinking about from the other person's perspective, whatever message it is that you're trying to get across, think about how you can send that message in a way that they're going to be able to get it. Not everybody comes from the same frame of reference. So the way you say something to one person and they get it, it may not be the exact same thing for another person. So we have to be able to adapt and understand. So that book just kind of reinforced everything that I have been trying to develop, within myself as a communicator. The fact that you recommended it, yes, I was like, yes, the art. Communicating. Yes. And I think Candy even agrees. She says, yes, that is such a dope book. And John Luke is adding it to his reading list now. Very good. Amberine's here. Hi. We miss you too. She says she misses us ladies.
Aw.
But yeah, so highly, highly recommend that book. I even wrote a
Yes.
blog about it like years ago.
Oh!
But my top 10 things that, I got out of it. So maybe it's time that I repost that since,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
come.
The compassion in that book, and like forgiving ourselves immediately for
Mhm.
like even miscommunications. Like if you
Yeah.
you differently, it's my job to sit and ask you how you
Mhm.
received it. Did you get
Right.
what what
Y
did you hear in what I
Yeah.
said?
Mhm.
And being okay to be like, okay, that's not exactly how I meant it. Let me reword that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
communication is a two-way street.
That it absolutely is. It's all about creating a shared meaning. That's what it is. Create that shared meaning, so that you can create and maintain, that connection with someone else. Again, that does not necessarily mean that you're going to agree on everything, but
No,
the
or
goal,
that you're
yeah,
even
the
gonna
goal is
make
to
yourself
learn.
heard, but it's
Right.
make
Yeah.
a valiant effort and forgive
Yes.
yourself
Right.
immediately, and like
Yeah.
that compassion for the other person and yourself in
Yeah.
communication is so
Yeah.
important.
That is such an important point right there. And my daughter and I were talking the other day about different personality types because
Mhm.
I tend to be, my communication style is I tend to be direct. If you ask me a yes or no question, I will give you a yes or no answer. Like to brief, accurate. That's what I go for.
Yes.
And I'm not necessarily also the most empathic person, but people view me as an empathic person. And what I realized is because I have been able to learn how to listen well and discern different situations require different listening styles. So figure out, are you supposed to just listen to be there for them, and kind of just have that emotional support, or do you need to help them solve a problem? Is that what they're asking? And so when I realized, okay, wow, when I'm just listening and just letting someone vent, it comes across as me being empathic. It comes across as empathy when naturally I am the type of person, I will freely admit it. If somebody comes to me with the same problem 2 or 3 times in a row, I do tend to be that person's like, okay, you've had this issue for quite some time now. What are you doing about it? And then just to be that direct. And that can come across as abrasive and uncaring as well. So I have had to develop that skill. And that's why the reason I'm sharing that is it is, if you feel like you struggle with something like that. Oh, people want me to be compassionate and I can't do that. It's like, um there are skills that you can work on. Just pinpoint something that you can improve, even if it's your listening skills. That will take you so far in your relationships, your personal and your professional relationships, and your children. And that's what we're talking about, with Rachel here. Your children will learn, that is a way to be able to create and maintain those healthy relationships.
Absolutely. And so many of us have been trained to jump in and take care of things, whether there's control issues,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
controlling your control issues
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
part
yeah,
of being a good listener, and not,
yeah,
if you can diffuse that sort
yeah,
of jump in and take care of
yeah,
it, then you're more likely to have compassion and also
mhm,
boundaries. You're like, okay,
yeah,
you can talk about this with me for 2 more times, And
Right.
then I'm gonna ask you to take that,
And
to
then,
find a
yeah,
therapist or
that's right.
something,
Well, or the
I
third
don't
time you approach me, you better have a solution along
It's
with it.
okay. It's okay to set boundaries about things as long
Right?
as you're not creating the suffering by saying, "I'm supposed to jump
Yes.
into this and, like, I can't, I have to
Right.
keep having to stop myself." Like, that's under your control.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also a skill as a parent that I highly recommend you try to develop, because if you jump in and you're trying to solve every single problem that your child is encountering, they're not going to learn the skills that they need because it's our job as parents to help them develop these skills so that they can survive without us. They
Yes.
they
Yeah,
need
not
to be able
become
to, yeah.
dependent and more dependent and more
Right.
dependent on us,
Yeah.
and to not say you don't have the skills to do this. You can't do it
Hmm.
like, so many of us
Hmm.
got. You can't,
Yeah.
girls don't, like,
Yeah.
whatever, we got. That's just
Hmm.
not true. You don't
Yeah.
have the skills yet because
Yeah.
you haven't practiced them yet. And here, let me model at least one,
Right.
or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Those tiny tweaks, they make such a huge difference in communication. And John Luke, one of the best practices I've learned, identify if they want input or just a vent. Yes. I'm a problem solver by nature, so I completely relate to you here, Jen.
Yeah.
Yes, problem solvers unite.
Me too. Me
Yeah, we
too.
have to take a step back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amberine says she appreciates my direct yes or no approach. Thank you, Amberine.
Yes,
It's
yes.
good to have that
Yes.
reinforcement sometimes, because you
Absolutely.
can be perceived if you're not careful. And this is one of the things I talk about, in some of the workshops I do. If you are more of the action oriented type of communication style, it can be perceived as, you're a bully at times, or that you don't care as much as everybody else cares, or that you're not interested, because you do tend to have that more direct, brief, type of communication style. So that's just an example of being mindful of how your communication affects everyone around you, because it is something that you can learn how to adapt, to other things. And going back to PossibiliTree, yes, that's one of the things that you're going to be, learning about. So, last question.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure that we highlighted during this interview? Anything that I forgot to ask?
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I think I want to leave everybody with just an ounce of, it's not your fault. It
Mhm.
may not be your problem. You can do it.
Mhm.
I believe in you. uh, there's so many opportunities and possibilities right outside your door if you are ready to change your perspective and see clearly, to imagine a better world. We can do it together. And I am going to do my part, and I'm excited to help support you in doing yours, whatever that may mean. And I'm just excited to be on this journey with all of you.
Beautiful. Nicely said. Where do we contact you, or how do we contact you? Give us all the info.
Absolutely. Well, rachelrainbows.com is where I'm putting all of the art that is changing the world. We're going to launch a crowdfunding campaign soon, and we're going to really need all of your help spreading the word. We're going to make a pilot. I've been in conversations with PBS, and I'm so excited and hoping that they're going to give me a distribution letter, and so I'm going to putting that out there, with a lot of fingers crossed, because I really want the program to be free for everyone. So we can make it self-sustaining, but we're going to need everybody's support. So rachelrainbows.com is where you'll find all of that good stuff.
Yes. All right. You heard it. So if you agree with what we have been talking about, and you understand that, look, we need help. Our kids need help. Our parents need help. Our world needs help in learning and developing these skills, even as adults. We need to be reminded of these things.
Yes.
Please go to that website. I will have the link in the show notes. So go to the website, and whatever you can do, whatever support that you can offer, I know Rachel will be so incredibly grateful for that. And yeah, let's get this thing on PBS. I think it will do a lot
Amazing.
of people a lot of good. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being on the show, for being the light that you are, and for doing and using your skills, using your talents for trying to just do good in the world. I think that is absolutely wonderful, and you are an inspiration to all of us.
As are you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everybody who participated, asked questions, made comments, thank you so much for being here. You really did make this episode just a fantastic, wonderful, fun, and engaging episode. So we appreciate you all. Everybody have a great rest of your Monday. Happy Monday. I hope this was a great way to start your week, get you pumped up and, just kind of get you out there and doing the good that you can in the world that is around you. Everybody take care. Yes, don't forget to hydrate. Take
Thank
care.
you. All right. Bye.